The Bo Show is heating up at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. Henry and I just got back from Broncos OTAs, wrapping up week 2 of OTAs, the second practice that the media gets to watch, and Henry and I were locked in, ready to break it down here on the DNVR Broncos Podcast.
Yeah, I would say it was the Stidham show. He was the one who actually looked like the... that was the first question. You know, you get to the office after practice, and everybody wants to know what happened. Like, did Bo look like a future Hall of Famer? Jarrett Stidham kind of looked like the future Hall of Famer out there.
No.
What was wrong?
Wow, Henry's drinking his protein shake,
which we serve at the bar now.
Touching the mic too much, and saying just outlandish things.
That's
about,
not outlandish. I think it'd be outlandish to say anything else.
I think so. Why? Tell me why Jarrett Stidham was a future Hall of Famer today.
He is
Your
so
words,
sharp.
not mine.
He looks so sharp. Oh, back-to-back weeks. I mean, so again, like they do 3 practices a week. We only get to see 1 a week. But in the 2 practices we've seen, he's had the best throw of the day in both. And it really hasn't been all that close. First one last week was the deep ball, the post to Troy Franklin. Just laid it into his hands perfectly. And then today, I mean, it was a freaky good throw. I was actually way down there, so I was right at the point of the catch, which is like 40, 45 yards downfield probably. And it's Marvin Mims.
You're wrong about that, but continue.
It was Marvin Mims who came on like I couldn't tell if it was a post or a crosser, but the defense is in cover 3. So you've got Skinner playing the deep middle, and Marvin Mims comes all the way across in front of him. Tremon Smith tries to get back, and the ball's in the air, and you're like, oh, this might be picked. Like, Tremon's dropping back there. He's got this. He's run up the sideline. And it just laid perfectly over the top of him. Again, like, that's a 4.3, 40 type guy, Tremon Smith, perfectly into Marvin's hands for a 55-yard touchdown. And it was pretty perfect. Like, that was a beautiful throw. And then there just wasn't anything to complain about. So that was just beautiful. Like, that was the one where you look around at everybody and it's like, wait, what did we just see here?
There's no doubt that was the play of the day. That's been the play of OTAs from what we've been able to see as well. A 55-yard bomb from Jarrett Stidham to Marvin Mims. Hit Marvin perfectly in stride, right where it needed to be. And from my angle, it looked like it was a perfect throw right at the beginning. So I wasn't surprised that he made it. But, I mean, there was Tremon Smith there who was trying to catch up to it, wasn't able to, and hit Marvin perfectly in stride for a 55-yard touchdown.
Hit him 45 yards downfield.
No, it was like
in there.
It was like 50. It was 55. It was like where he caught it was just a couple yards before the end zone. I mean, so it was awesome, and that's something that I think when you look at this quarterback room, you're like, is the deep ball there or not? And it was a great sign to see that from Jarrett Stidham. However, I do disagree with you about the rest of practice, though. To me, Bo Nix, again, without a doubt, Jarrett Stidham, play of the day. Great separation from Marvin Mims, really showing off that speed. But what I will say is the rest of the day, Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix look like the exact same dude. So if you want to say that Jarrett Stidham looked like a future Hall of Famer, your words, not mine. That's probably not what I would use based off of today.
No.
That Bo Nix looked like... I'm not putting words in your mouth. You said that to start the show.
No, the question was, was Bo Nix looking like a future Hall of Famer? I was like, well, if anybody did, it would be Jarrett Stidham.
That's what I'm saying.
I didn't come in and say like future Hall of Famer Jarrett Stidham. That's very different.
Okay. Anyways, Bo Nix looked just as good outside of having not having a 55-yard touchdown pass, and to be honest,
is a big difference.
Zach, over an entire I don't know.
That's a big difference.
No, not. He had the play of the day. We're absolutely giving that to him. He did that. But it feels like you're taking away from Bo.
No.
And honestly, Zach Wilson kind of in this boat too. I think Zach had probably the worst practice of anyone last week. And Zach was fine today. But I would say that it's really boiling down to Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix. And again, outside of that one pass, they were like the exact same player today. I'm impressed with Jarrett Stidham. He looks like the exact guy that they brought in last year when they wanted him to be a really good backup and maybe have the chance to be a starter at some point for $5 million. And when it comes to Jarrett Stidham, that's exactly what he looks like right now. He looks like the solid veteran that you want. But the fact that Bo Nix, you could swap out the jerseys and I wouldn't know if it's Bo Nix or Jarrett Stidham, I think that speaks volumes to Bo Nix. So outside of the play of the day, that's my biggest takeaway today is that Bo Nix continues to just look like a veteran in the NFL right now. Is he making the flashy plays today? No, he did not have that 55-yard touchdown pass. But does he look like a veteran quarterback that is not being shaken up as a rookie? 100%. So that's my biggest takeaway is Bo Nix continues to just have this look like he's much older. And that's actually one of the things that really stood out to me today. Sean Payton is throwing a lot of things at all three quarterbacks because there's a lot that's going on. There's a lot of checks at the line of scrimmage that are happening right now. There's a no huddle period that was happening, a lot of pre-movement before the snap. This is stuff that, especially with a young quarterback, especially when two of your three quarterbacks are brand new, maybe you save until mandatory minicamp in a couple of weeks. Maybe you save until training camp to do all of these things, and Sean's throwing all of it to them right now. And so the fact that Bo's able to just look like Jarrett Stidham, I really like it.
Yeah, I think he definitely, had a better day today than last week. I think last week he kind of got away with a bunch of throws. Balls behind guys, balls that were a little bit over guys' heads, and they were able to slow down and grab them, whatever it is.
He had a good practice last week, too.
Oh, yeah, he did. But I think that when you just look
hating.
No, I'm not hating. The placement of the balls today was much better for the most part. There were a couple... I think it was the first 7-on-7 throw of the day. He just throws this quick hitch to Marvin Mims, and that was not there. That was Jaquan just sitting on there the whole way, and Jaquan makes a great play to charge in and break it up.
That one was clear. I truly don't know if that was on Marvin or Bo, but the communication was not there because it was clearly a read route where Marvin thought that he was just supposed to turn around, where Bo threw it in a way of he was supposed to come back to the ball and break in on it. So I do agree something was off there, but I don't know if that was necessarily a bad pass or if it was on Marvin.
Yeah, and then
something was off there.
Later on, I think it was back-to-back plays. This one, Marvin was going up, I think, the left sideline with Levi Wallace on him. And Levi Wallace makes a great play to break it up. Just kind of like swallows Marvin up on the sideline. I thought that one was a little bit underthrown. I thought if you get that out in front of him, I think there might have been a chance to get caught. And then the other throw that I didn't love was... it was actually very similar to the play last week. It's zone coverage. It's Lucas Kroll coming across. You've got Jaquan in zone coverage, some safety over the top. Last week, Lucas Kroll just kind of jumped over Jaquan and caught it. This week, Jaquan made a very physical play to just kind of get a shoulder into him and knock that ball out. I thought that ball could have been caught if it was a little bit better placed. But those were really the only issues I had with Bo all day.
That play?
Kroll, yeah.
No, that one, I was right there in front of that. That one, it hit Kroll in the hands. He turned around and Jaquan punched it out. That was 100% on Jaquan. Kroll has to hold on to that.
He does have to hold on, but you could have made it a lot easier if you just placed that further inside.
I don't think so. I mean, he turned around and then it was punched out.
Yeah, but I think
that was not on.
But there was a big
regardless
pocket
of the quarterback
there.
And he threw it right in between three or four guys.
But it goes back to what we're talking about with last week, where just some of these balls, I think you could have made it a little bit easier for guys. And that was one that I think you probably could have given a better throw. But again, that's 3 plays over the course of the day. And the rest of it was really good. I think what you really like is the pocket awareness. That's what stood out the most is when you have the rushers coming around the edge, the way he steps up in the pocket. I can't remember. I think he hit LJ on one of those, Lil Jordan Humphrey on one of those. But yeah, I think that is what really stood out. I think The deep balls, we really didn't see that many, but in general, he's making good decisions, getting the ball where it needs to be. Again, like you nitpick like 3 or 4 of those throws, where I think last week you nitpick maybe 6 or 7 of those throws, 5 or 6 of those throws. And that's why I think Bo had a better day today. And I think last week I probably would have given him like an A-, and today I probably give him an A.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. That's why I'm really impressed when a rookie on his 6th training camp practice is getting an A and an A- in his first practice, if you want to go there, and an A in today's practice that the media is able to see. That's why I just continue to be very impressed with him. And what we say, or what I think at least, is if this is anywhere close to being, if Bo is anywhere close to being just as good as Zach Wilson or just as good as Jarrett Stidham, he will absolutely be the quarterback of this team. And right now, I think he's very close, if not like just neck and neck. And one of the things that Sean talked about after today is the Broncos are still rotating a lot of players. He says, don't read into who is starting right now, not just a quarterback, but at any position. And right now, today, the 2 practices we've seen, it has been Bo Nix as the starting quarterback, but Jarrett Stidham got a start earlier this week. Zach Wilson got to be the starter earlier this week, and just happens to be the Bo is the guy today. But a lot of rotating at other positions as well. But again, I just continue to be impressed. But I do think that there's already some separation with this quarterback room, with Zach Wilson seemingly number 3, and then these other 2 guys kind of fighting for 1 and 2. But that doesn't mean that Zach Wilson's not going to make the team. They could carry all 3 of these guys, or there's obviously still so much time moving forward where Zach Wilson can make a jump, Jarrett Stidham could take a step back. But then there's also the money aspect involved here. So it is very interesting. I will say that outside, one of the things that we got to see today, outside of the 55-yard touchdown from Jarrett Stidham, we did see the balls downfield go up a little bit. I want to feel like last week it was like 5-yard completions left and right, left and right. We still see a lot of those checkdowns, which is just smart. Take what the defense is giving you. But today there were a lot of completions from all 3 guys, about 15 yards downfield. And I really like to see that start pushing the ball downfield a little bit more. Yeah,
I thought Zach Wilson was more conservative this week than he was last week. I don't think that he was put in bad situations all day. You just go through and the first throw of the day I really liked was this little curl flat. He read the curl perfectly and just put the ball there. But after that, I mean, there's just Troy Franklin had a 3rd down drop because they did a bunch of 3rd down drills, we should say, today, which is why things might look a little bit different today versus yesterday. The checkdowns don't really pop as much because you have a line that you're trying to get to, but you have the Troy Franklin drop on what should have been a 1st down on a short throw. You have a sack from a blitz up the middle. I couldn't tell which linebacker that was. That was one where it's just blown up and he just has to take off and run. It doesn't work. You got number 30, whose name I forget. He was on the practice squad last year. McAllister. He was a free runner and had like a blitz on a sack on Zach Wilson. Devin Key had a blitz that was a sack on Zach Wilson. So there were just a lot of those situations where there wasn't a lot to like, but it also felt like of the 3 quarterbacks, he was probably dealt the worst hand. Sometimes that happens when you play with the 3s, though. So it would have been nice to see him find a way to power through. There were definitely a couple throws. I got one to like Lucas Kroll where they kind of cleared out the whole left side. He definitely was 3rd today, though, just like he was last week, which isn't a great sign for him.
No, it's not. And there is so much time left. But, Henry, we're given like a little peanut here and there. We got to roll with what we see.
Yep.
And what we're seeing so far, 100%. We see a third of it. And Sean acknowledges that we see a third of it. He says, man, this is like you guys are watching Netflix series and you're missing 2 out of every 3 episodes, and I have to keep you updated with this. It's tough. And I'm like, well, Sean, if you want to, you can invite us to all of them. We'll be there for all of them. So we're only able to talk about what we see. Sean does say that the entire quarterback room is doing very well. He is putting... let's talk about this after I give a shout out to our friends over at Vestibule, where you know who else we saw today, Henry? We saw Baron Browning out there. And boy, Baron Browning wearing number 5. I mean, Randy Gregory was wearing number 5. That's a great number for a big pass rusher. And Baron Browning looks great in that too. And if you want to invest in Baron Browning, that's right. You can invest in a current athlete and actually have part of his success. Invest in his future success. That's what Vestibule is doing, where you can now buy stock in players' performance and players' future income over at Vestibule. And right now they're working with Baron Browning. They're going to add a lot more athletes, but Baron Browning is their first athlete right now. And you can buy his stock. His IPO is live right now. So how do you do it? Download the Vestibule app over at Vestibule now. And it's got all the information for what you need to buy Baron Browning stock. It's a really cool program. Good catch, Hank. That's impressive. Or you can scan the QR code on the screen to also get in on Vestibule. It's a really cool program. So if you want to have some part of Baron Browning's success, buy his IPO. It's live right now over at the Vestibule app. So make sure to go download the app and invest in Baron Browning.
And if you are a bettor or you want to be a bettor, make sure you download Circa Sports Colorado, because even though they don't have all of like the gimmicks that the other sports books have, what they do have is the best odds. And you can look through their entire app and just compare to other sports books. It really is true that because of their whole model that they have, where they don't do the gimmicks so much, they just give you your money through natural betting. You get the best lines when you look at Circa. That's especially true when you look at things with long odds or futures. So like if you wanted the Dolphins to win the Super Bowl, for example, I would imagine the best odds are over at Circa. If you want somebody to win a golf tournament, it's probably the best odds over at Circa. Because of that, it's kind of the go-to for people who bet a lot of money. It also helps that they have super high limits. But those margins on the edge are really what makes the difference between a good bettor and a bad bettor. And when they give you that little extra juice there, that's a great way to pick a sports book. So download the app at circasports.com. Circa Sports bets can only be made while physically located in the state of Colorado. You have to be 21 or older. All rights reserved. Circa Sports Colorado encourages you to gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER or visit problemgamblingcolorado.org.
The Toyota chat is absolutely popping off right now. Yeah. Let's be nice to
everybody's
everyone
so angry
that's here right now. Yeah,
I don't even know why people are mad at
Let's
me.
be nice. And you know what? The future is bright. And the future is bright. So you got to throw some shady rays on, Henry. And let's tell you why the future is bright with the Denver Broncos. Because, Henry, there is something that's going on at OTAs this year that is so different than last year. Sean Payton is having the time of his life. Maybe we need to call on Sergio Dip to get a little quote about how Sean's having the time of his life. He seems so much happier because he's got his guys at quarterback. All three of these guys were brought in by him, but he's also doing something. He is not tamping down expectations for this quarterback room at all. It took him 7 to 8 months to say one good thing about Russell Wilson last year. From the time he was hired, the first time he said something good about Russ was in training camp. He's already been just oohing and ahhing, not just over Bo Nix, but this entire quarterback room. Today, he's doubling down on what he said last week. He's saying this entire quarterback room is doing really well. And I think the words he used for Bo Nix specifically, he's doing very well. He's throwing the ball, quote, extremely well. This is something, and now people might say, like, well, what's he supposed to say? He did this last year, and he did not say this about his starting quarterbacks at all, or about his quarterback room at all. So this is a complete 180, which tells me Sean Payton thinks the future is bright with the quarterback room.
I mean, it would be bad news if he didn't.
Well, he didn't last year, and it was clearly bad news.
Yeah, definitely.
But, I mean, he was honest with us last year about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely a good sign. I don't have much else to add. He definitely is saying nice things about the quarterbacks.
So go check out Shady Rays. Use the code DNVR to get 35% off Shady Rays. The future is bright. And Henry, you might just want to leave those on to block out the haters, because you have, how many notes do we have here from you?
Honestly, I love Hank. I love him to death. I think he's one of the better reporters at DNVR
Yeah.
Broncos
Wow.
in general.
There's only two of us.
Those shades make him look like he's on drugs. Honestly, I think you should take them off.
Wow. So you're saying they make him look cool? Just kidding.
Do we do
Drugs
it?
aren't
Wow,
cool.
that really is bright out here now. That really is bright.
So Henry, we both have a lot of notes. You go old school with that. I just throw them all on my phone.
They tell you so specifically you're not allowed to be on your phone.
They say put it behind a roster and it's okay. So
That's not what the email says. If you want to ask around, you can go ahead.
I did.
I know, but I just follow the rules.
And so we both have a lot of notes. And of course, everyone cares about the quarterback position. And the reason for that is because they have a number 12 overall pick. And the other reason for that is if the quarterback's good, the team's going to be good. If the quarterback is good, the team's probably not going to be good. So that's why we start with the quarterback position. But we have so many other notes. What's another big takeaway? And we got a lot of people in the Toyota chat asking us about injuries. We are going to hit injuries, but let's talk about the guys that were on the field first.
I think. Wait, so starting with injuries?
No.
Oh, okay.
You don't listen to me either.
Sorry, I was
Jeez
just trying to
Louise.
think about what the big takeaway is, and that's got to be Jonah Elliss. He was all over the place.
Yep.
Two plays really stand out the most. One, I couldn't tell if it was RPO read option. Point is, Stidham pulls the ball and tries to run around the edge. Jonah chases him down from the backside so quickly.
Yep.
For what would have been a loss of a few yards. Also blows up a screen in there. Some quick wins as a pass rusher as well. I was talking to Ryan Edwards about this for KOA, and I missed that one. But one of the things he said was that there was one play where he kind of got swallowed up by DeMontre Jacobs, who I think is kind of a dark horse to make the team as a backup tackle. But that's a really big dude, really, really big dude. Later on, though, just kind of comes back at him and beats him with a little quick move because he's waiting for him to kind of come into his body. And that's the sort of veteran stuff that you don't, that you don't really expect from a young guy. And again, like it's one practice. So you can't say like the guy's going to be awesome, but it's one of those days where you look at him and say, this guy's not even 21 yet. Like he's playing this well against NFL veterans after being on the team for about 2 weeks, and it's just so excited to get it, or so easy to get excited about him after you see what you saw today. And again, like Nick Benito had the big day as a rookie that didn't really translate, but still, like based on today, that was to me the big story.
Yeah, and someone's asking, are pads on yet? No, pads won't be on until training camp, so it is harder to evaluate running backs. That's why we won't really talk about running backs much in this offseason. But also, it's the same thing with pass rushers and with big with runs in the middle. You can't really tell, but I will say that Jonah Elliss also has jumped out to me so far as well, especially with how he's pass rushing right now. And the thing that really surprised me so far, he does not look small. And when I stood next to him in the locker room at rookie minicamp, he did not look big at all. And I was worried about his size. When he puts the pads on, he looks like a normal outside linebacker. And the thing is, Nick Benito, his rookie year, did look really small when he was in pads and on the field. Look, Jonah Elliss looks like he belongs. So I would not be surprised if Jonah Elliss is a big-time rotational player for them, or at least if he, if not a starter, he might be a starter across from Baron Browning. So number 52, you got to keep your eyes on him because, Hank, he also had at least one or two other pass rushes where he could have had a sack, and it's impossible to tell because you obviously don't touch the quarterback, but holy cow, very impressed with Jonah Elliss early on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of those edge rushers had a good day. Ronnie Perkins had a nice sack. Baron Browning had a great, it was a great run stop, probably a tackle for loss. It's just a one-on-one block on the right side. And the running back's kind of coming that way. He leans outside, he leans inside, and just bottles the whole thing up for a tackle. He had a spin move that was pretty awesome. I think all those edge rushers kind of did something. You also mentioned the running backs.
Yeah.
I had two things on the running backs. First one was Javonte made a great cut today, like this jump cut that really did look explosive, which is a really good sign. Basically, I think Jonathan Cooper was like pressing a gap between McGlinchey and Miners, and there's just like this bang, just jumps from one gap to two gaps over, and then Javonte's just free up the sideline. So I think that one stands out, and then Jaleel too. We talked about it a little bit last week, but he looks really fast, and the time it stood out to me today was just he's downfield. The play's basically over. The running backs like to just keep running to the end zone and pretend it's a touchdown. about 25 yards from the end zone, he just shifts up a gear and he's just gone.
Yep.
It's crazy how quickly he just flipped that switch and how fast he looked. And he's looked fast both times we've seen him. So those are the two running back notes that I had.
And I think those are the two guys that, at least early on, but not a surprise, that are going to lead the team in terms of being on the field, in terms of stats, because I mentioned this last week. I was really impressed with the way Javonte Williams looked last week, just as impressed today. But I heard there was some media saying that the opposite, like they were concerned about his injury. And honestly, I have not seen that at all. I've been very impressed with the way Javonte looks. It looks like he's back to normal old self. Again, can't make that conclusion right now because pads aren't on. But I think he's in place to be the starting running back for the Broncos, and that is pretty darn getting close to solidified. Obviously, a long way to go. But Jaleel, Sean Payton talked about how important it is to have that joker at the tight end position and the running back position. Man, Jaleel could be so close to fully becoming that. We heard a couple of guys last year, Sean point to say could be that. Jaleel was one of them. But Sean so desperately wants one of these guys to take that joker role. And essentially what it means is to be a receiving threat at tight end or a receiving threat out of the backfield as a running back. And Jaleel, man, he could be that guy. And Sean Payton ideally has his next Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara situation with Javonte and with Jaleel.
And Blake Watson's right in there too. I think Blake Watson, I
think there's still some space though.
I mean, of course, they haven't even really started playing yet. But I think, to me, and Audric Estime, we'll get into the injuries later, but he's going to be out until training camp.
Yeah. That's why I think
he's
some
the only
room
guy
is starting to separate.
He's the only guy who I have is firmly on the roster week 1. I think when you look at all the ways this could play out, I think I would be very surprised if you go into the season with Javonte, Jaleel, Samaje, Audric, just because I think Blake Watson honestly has as good a chance as I guess he probably is 5th of the group, but it's pretty slim. On top of that, they might only carry 3. There's just a lot of ways I think that this one could shake out. And especially with the trade market, it's wide. It is wide open.
Yeah, that's definitely how it was coming into this. I'm also, I think we're already starting to see separation. I think it is Jaleel and obviously Audric's making the team, and Javonte as well. I think it's those 3, and then we need to see if one of those guys takes a 4th spot, because we know that Michael Burton is making this team as a fullback. So they could carry 4 running backs. That wouldn't shock me, because this team is going to run the ball a lot. But I think it's really going to boil down between Blake Watson and Samaje. I already think that there's been separations right now there. That's just what I've seen.
Yeah.
Henry, one of the biggest takeaways to me today, and this just a little concerning, but just one practice. This practice was dominated by drops. There were drops left and right. There were wide receivers drop passes from all 3 quarterbacks. Bo Nix got hurt with that. Jared Stidham got hurt with that. Zach Wilson got hurt with that. It was just, and I'm just going to chalk it up to just a fluky day from the receivers right now. But, we saw Troy Franklin had a drop. You mentioned Lucas Kroll had that drop. It was punched out, but if you get 2 hands on it, you got to hold on to it. I'm not putting any of that on Bo Nix there. You had multiple receivers have drops. That's something that I definitely want to see decline, especially when pads come on. Then there's just going to be even more contact, which could create more drops. So that to me was really the only downside of today's practice. And credit to the Broncos defense, because Jaquan got his hand in on a couple of them. And some other guys were getting their hands in on him. In fact, one of them was J.L. Skinner, who did a great job breaking up a pass. The receiver caught it. He immediately knocked it out. It was an incompletion in my eyes. He didn't make a football move, but to me, the defense is really getting their hands on the balls, which is great, because Sean talked about it last week about being able to get turnovers. We saw when the Broncos went on the 5-game win streak, they were just getting so many turnovers at an unprecedented rate. That clearly, I think, is something that's being preached right now, is hands on the ball, let's punch these things out, and they're doing a great job with it.
Definitely. And JL had that one. That was the only turnover of the day. You didn't think it was.
Right.
But the safeties in general I thought were really good. I think PJ had a really good play in the running game. Again, just playing two gaps in a way that you don't really expect from a safety, but just plugs it up and again stuffs a run. And I think Sean shouted him out after practice. He was asked like, who's stepping up as a leader, especially now Justin Simmons is gone. And that was the first name out of his mouth. Also mentioned Baron Browning, but PJ. Yeah. I think that this is pretty much locked in my mind with PJ at strong safety and Brandon Jones at free safety.
PJ is locked in.
PJ is locked in, yes. I think that one's pretty much settled. And then we'll see what happens. But I also think...
Well, really quick, let me play off of that. Because I couldn't agree with you more there about PJ. We're not allowed to talk about who's starting and who's getting the majority of the reps with the ones. But we can when Sean talks about it. So that's why we're able to say that Bo was a starter today because Sean admitted that, but then said don't read anything into it.
Same thing with Forsythe.
Yep, same thing with Forsythe. But if Sean comes out and says who the leader of the defense is and who's really stepping up with Justin Simmons out, and he points to P.J. Locke, he's not pointing to a backup there.
Yeah.
And I'll just say that kind of has matched what we've seen as well. So Brandon Jones and P.J. Locke are absolutely the guys I expect to be the starters week 1.
Yep. And I think there are some limitations there just because you don't have the length at that position you probably like, and you don't have like the overwhelming speed. He knows what he's doing. So he's always in position. He's really good against the run. I wonder if there's going to be some limitations in terms of the coverages, especially when you have Jaquan out there, just because Jaquan has some of those same traits where he's just not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy. And so he overwhelms people. He overwhelms your expectations a little bit, I guess. And so today, for example, I think this is back-to-back weeks we've seen it. Somebody's been able to just kind of jump over Jaquan and make a catch. And today it was David Sills on the boundary. And Jaquan had a chance to try to get an arm up and try to break it up. But again, like he's just... If he was 3 inches taller with a longer wingspan, I think he probably gets it.
Right.
And he's a good player, and you definitely want him on the field. Same thing with PJ. But when you have two of those guys out there in your nickel defense, it's not that you have to be concerned or do those sorts of things. You just have to be aware of it and know what sorts of defenses you're calling. And if something goes wrong for one of them, then you deal with it when it arises. But as of now, I think that defensively... The only position that isn't really settled to me is just that second cornerback spot.
What do you think's happening at inside linebacker?
I think it's Jonas. I think he's just so well-rounded. I think especially when Sean Payton shouts out that like the special teams ability that Cody Barton brings. Cody Barton has some strengths. And Sean said that too. He got the most reps that he's ever gotten last season. They saw the strengths, they saw the weaknesses. Having gone back and watched a lot of Cody Barton, the strengths are he's solid in coverage. The ball seems to find him in coverage more so than he's just locking up whoever he's defending. But then there's just some deficiencies in the run game. And that's where I think Jonas Griffith is probably the guy who is your more traditional middle linebacker. Just somebody who can fill the Josie Jewell role, plugging things up in the middle. And maybe I'm probably jumping the gun saying that one's solidified.
Yeah, I agree.
But from what I've seen so far, I think that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the way that would be ideal for the Broncos is for Jonas Griffith to take that big jump and to be the starter. He has all the tools and traits you could possibly want. He just needs to stay healthy and see if he can put it together from that perspective. But I do think that one, Sean said there's many guys competing for that. No, in my opinion, it's Cody Barton and Jonas Griffith competing for that one. I do think that's still up in the air. And from what we've seen, I do think that they're still rotating a lot there as well. Okay, Hank, any other takeaways that you want to get to before we hop into injuries?
I'll skip through them real quick.
As you pull it up, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at True Fan Travel, where if you want to come hang out with us down in Florida, we're going to be there the end of September. We're going to see Broncos Bucks. Boy, that could be a very interesting game. Week 3. Are the Broncos going for a 3-0 start? We'll be there with friends over at True Fan Travel, where we're not just watching the game, Henry, we're making a weekend out of this. The entire DNVR Broncos crew is going to be there, and we're going to have a boat party. We're going to have a tailgate. We're going to do things, I believe, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's going to be a party, and if you want to join us, you can get your trip now. And not only do you get access to those things, hooking you up with hotel stays, helping you out with all of the travel planning. So if you want to join us, go to truefantravel.com to secure your spot. That's truefantravel.com/trips to book your trip with us. It's going to be a blast, an absolute blast. And also, if you want to go to some CU, if you're a CU fan, want to see Coach Prime, we're doing some trips with them and other sports as well. So make sure to rock and roll with us.
That weekend that we're in Tampa too, it's my birthday.
Oh, boy.
So I'm taking my wife and I'm gonna stay a couple more days. That's wild.
Let's go.
And I'm going to Disneyland after Disney World.
Wow.
You're going to treat that like your Super Bowl. I love it. You're
I'm
here.
taking the whole time.
I love it. That's amazing.
Also, even though we're not in the Toyota Lounge today, we do have the Toyota chat, which is nice. Well,
Be nice.
it
in the
hasn't
Toyota.
been
Yeah,
nice. It
speaking
has
of
not been a
be
nice
nice
chat.
in the Toyota
I know.
chat,
I don't know what they're
specifically
so
to Hank.
mad about.
Turn this hate on me.
I don't know what
It's
they're
that
mad about.
Montana
I
shirt.
can handle
We
the
can't-
I don't understand.
It's the damn Montana shirt. We don't like them.
Wow, I'm giving you every single play here. So the Toyota though, we love them. The 4Runner, the Camry, the Corolla, the Corolla Cross, the Corolla Cross Hybrid, the Corolla Hatchback, the Corolla Hybrid without the Cross, the GR Corolla. Like, then these are just the Corollas. They've got so many different options. It's kind of amazing. You can just scroll and scroll and scroll, and you think you have a favorite, and then all of a sudden you roll past another, and
So
you're like,
true.
oh my goodness. So if you haven't checked out this whole lineup, you definitely should. The all-new 2024 Tacoma is a favorite. So is the iconic 2024 Land Cruiser that's coming this spring. Toyota offers 17 different models with all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the 4Runner. And we want to give a special shout out to our Front Range Toyota stores. Head to a location near you. There's the AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL and the official vehicle of DNVR.
Man, so much good news today coming out of Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit.
Yes.
It just rolls off the
It
tongue.
really does.
It's so short, crisp, rolls off the tongue.
BPP.
It's even harder. CS or just C because it's one word.
Let's just call it a C.
Anyways,
yeah.
lots of good news coming out of Broncos Park. And there's some unfortunate news. Injuries already popping up yesterday or last week. We, of course, found out about Greg Dulcich being sidelined with the hamstring. Sean Payton says he's going to be fine for training camp, but this is his 5th hamstring injury, I think, since the team drafted him just 2 years ago. He obviously is still not practicing today. He's off on the side. No update on him today. But, Henry, more injuries are popping up too.
Yeah, that's football. That's just kind of how it goes.
Wow.
Like, you hate to see it for everybody individually, but you're just looking to avoid the long-term injuries. And if you compare it to last year, I feel like you're in about the same place. You know, you had the Baron Browning injury last year that kept him out about half the season. There's your Drew Sanders injury. And there's usually just a couple things that kind of nag. And with Greg Dulcich not out there, you don't love to see it, but again, like, it kind of is what it is. You're not too surprised at this point. And there's a real part of me that thinks, like, just keep him out, sit him out there the first half of training camp, just see if you can get him healthy for the season, and, you know, give him your 12, 15 seam routes a game and keep the game plan simple. But the big one, Riley Moss not being out there, just stings a little bit.
And really quick with Riley Moss, the update on him is that he tweaked his back. And Sean expects him that he could be back as early as next week. That also scares me. Just like a Greg Dulcich hamstring injury
just weird, yeah.
bothers me. A back injury, a tweaking of a back can mean so many different things. Typically, that's one that just lingers a bit, or it's one that pops up again later. So I'm touching wood. I really hope that does not happen. But that is just like a really weird one. I mean, he's super young and tweaked his back. I'm just really hoping that he's able to stay healthy, because as Ivan in the Toyota chat points out, Riley Moss tweaked his groin last offseason and was limited in what he could do. So it kind of hurt his development. You really don't want to see, I mean, you never want to see anyone get injured, but you really don't want to see young guys who are still learning and developing, especially a young guy like Riley Moss who has a chance to be a starter opposite Pat Surtain with Jaquan in the middle. It's a bummer. So hopefully next week we're talking about great news. Riley Moss was fully out there, but just with the back, it's a little weird.
Yeah, especially with the competition, because I really think that job, it wouldn't be like settled by now, but I think that there's a world in which he has a pretty clear lead. I didn't see much of Damari Mathis out there, which sometimes is a good thing, but he just really didn't show up in my notes.
He was out there, though.
He was definitely out there. Yeah. There just wasn't much that involved him, which again, sometimes a good thing.
Yeah.
Levi
Safe
Wallace,
from a corner, that's okay.
like I said, had that pass breakup.
He got beat once, but also had a nice pass breakup.
So he had that pass breakup against Mims, but he also got beat on... Which one do you remember him getting beat on? Because I have him... There was like a zone play that was just kind of weird, and there was like this gap on the sideline where I think he could have sucked in there a little bit. But I almost thought there was another one, but I'm not seeing my notes quickly. So again, just kind of an up and down day, and I think there was the same thing from him last week. Whereas Riley last week, I think played really, really well.
Yeah. Riley's my front runner if he's healthy to win that job.
Definitely. And again, like I don't think that we would be saying like he's the starter, although like he'd probably be in that same boat as Jonas Griffith, where you say like, hey, based on what we've seen, one guy looks like the best here. And again, next week I'll pay more attention to Mari. He just didn't really jump out all that much.
Yeah. And I think that was a good thing for him.
It must be.
He was out there a lot. He was out there a lot with significant snaps, is what I'll say, and did not really notice him. A lot of zone run today, and the quarterbacks, I think, did a really good job of finding the pockets. Not just but also the receivers I want to give credit to for finding the pockets in the zones, and the quarterbacks finding them and throwing it there as well. And then another injury, brutal. Talk about young guys getting injured. Audric Estime, the running back out of Notre Dame, last week he got injured. He had a scope on his knee. Sean Payton, after saying that, I think he realized where this could go. A running back with the scope on the knee, he really tried to downplay it. Said everything went great. In fact, it was better than we could have even expected, essentially. He is going to continue his rehab throughout the offseason, but he will be ready to go. He made it very clear he's going to be ready to go at the start of training camp. Henry, I think I said this last week with Greg Dulcich when Sean said Greg will be ready to go at the start of training camp. That's pretty much, after doing this for 8 seasons, this is going to be my 9th. It's pretty much what every coach says about an injury that's kind of up in the air, is they're going to be ready to go for training camp, and then training camp rolls around, and half the time, if not more, those players aren't ready to go, and then they just kind of set a new timeline. So to me, I'm freaked out about Riley Moss. I'm freaked out about Estime. I'm freaked out about Dulcich. Obviously, we know Drew Sanders has a longer timeline. But for me, I'm freaked out because I don't think all 3 of these guys are probably going to be ready to go at training camp. And it's such a bummer because there was a legitimate chance that Audric Estime was going to take this starting job at some point this season. And if not, he was going to play a role like a 3rd and 1 guy where you just need him to get across, a goal line guy. He was going to have a role, and he still very might well have a role, but we know he's going to be out the next 2 weeks at least.
Yep. I get they say like a scope is minor, but like if it's that minor, why do you even need to like do a procedure to look with your eyes? Like you would think you could do something with. So yeah, it definitely stings. I think assuming he actually is healthy, I don't think it should be too big of a deal for a running back. You know, we heard from Marvin today talking about how tough it was to miss a lot of the offseason last year with his hamstring thing. There's a lot more that you have to know as a receiver. And while you'd love to be getting Audric these reps and the pass protection reps in particular, I think that he should be fine as long as he really is healthy and ready to go for the start of training camp. But yeah, again, there's just some chaos in that running backs room. And I think that's a really good thing. I think you've got a whole bunch of cases to be made for all sorts of those guys. And it just sucks that Audric doesn't have a chance to really put his stamp on things right now, and you hope that it doesn't linger.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. Let's see. Caden Stearns was not practicing either. Maybe that kind of helps solidify or helps lock in PJ.
Wow.
And Greg Dulcich off to the side. I did not see John Franklin Myers there.
Nope.
And that is, I'm not concerned about it, but he, from reporting, he was supposed to be back this week, was not out there. Again, not concerned because he seems like the ultimate team guy. And it's reported that he has to take care of some business in Texas at least the first week of OTAs. But just, it was interesting that the reporting was he was supposed to be there this week. He wasn't there, so we'll keep our eyes out for him.
Yeah, because I think it was Mike Kliss first who said he'll be back for like week 2 or week 3. And then last week, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said he'll be back
Chris
next
Thomason,
week.
I think.
It might be, yeah. And so it's definitely something to keep an eye on. The big thing, though, is that defensive line looked really good again this week.
Yeah, I agree.
And it looked really good last week. Today, though, Angelo Blackson made a big play. He did the same thing last week where he's just blowing through the middle and all of a sudden he's got a tackle for loss. Malcolm Roach did the same thing today. And like those are guys who in theory are your number 4 and number 5 defensive linemen in one order or the other. And when you have those guys making those plays against an offensive line that like, I think, it's like the give and take with all this stuff is that if a defensive line makes a play, it does it against offensive linemen. I'm not worried about this offensive line. You have the question mark at center, but you've got 4 pieces back from what was a good offensive line last year. I think that this is a really exciting group. And as soon as you throw John Franklin Myers in there, all of a sudden it becomes pretty overwhelming, you would hope. You'd like to see Zach Allen become more of a game changer than just, he was a solid, good starter last year.
Agreed.
Same thing with DJ Jones. And if you get a step from one of those 2 guys, you're in great shape. And I think also DJ Jones hasn't made this team yet. They save what, like $9 million, $10 million, something like that if they move on. And as of now, you look at that and say, I feel really good about 5 guys they have out there with the 3 starters, Blackson and Malcolm Roach. Matt Henningsen's ready to play. Like, he's played a bunch already. If he's your 6th lineman, you love that he's your 6th lineman. And you've got other guys back there. Elijah Garcia batted a ball last week, has flashed before. So I think that while the competition, the order to me is pretty much set in terms of the rankings. Like, you could, Roach and Blackson will kind of go back and forth. But there's no guarantee to me that DJ Jones makes the team, although I would expect him to. Like, it'd be great to just have a really good, overwhelming defensive line. You could justify moving on if you really wanted to, though.
Yeah, very, very fair. And I think I mentioned it earlier, but Courtland Sutton was not out there. We have 1 more week until it gets really interesting because next week is the final week of voluntary OTAs.
Yes.
The following week is mandatory, which then we better see John Franklin Myers. Will we see Courtland Sutton, or will this begin his holdout? Because right now, when it's voluntary, it's technically not considered a holdout, even though he's made it known that he wants a new contract. Once you miss things that are fined, that's when it becomes a holdout. So that's when it becomes really interesting. We're just 10 days away from that. Henry, we've got 2 pieces of news coming out today. The Broncos will not be on Hard Knocks. They're going with the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. They're going with the Caleb Williams show. And I have to imagine that this came down to the Broncos and the Bears, because there were, I think, 5 or 6 teams eligible, and it was so easy to knock a couple of those teams off. But the Broncos it was just announced like 10 minutes ago that the Bears are going to be the ones on Hard Knocks. So there's an off-season Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
There's obviously the normal Hard Knocks, which is like training camp preseason. And then there's going to be an in-season one, but it's going to be different this year. They're going to do an entire division. So maybe this sets up for the AFC West being the in-season Hard Knocks, because obviously you got Sean Payton, you got Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and then Raiders. I don't care about that, but and then the Chargers. You have Harbaugh now, so maybe now this sign is pointing to them not having their own Hard Knocks show during training camp, but them being on Hard Knocks for the AFC West division during the season.
And if they're doing the division, they've got to change the rules somehow. Because there's like a whole bunch of them, but the big ones for this would be you can't have a first-year head coach.
Right.
It's going to be tough to find too many divisions that don't have any first-year head coaches.
Well, no, they have to change this one. They have to change
if they're doing
this
AFC
rule.
West. Does every division have one?
No, what I'm saying is they have to change it because the other rule for Hard Knocks is you can't if you made the playoffs the year before, you're ineligible. And
that's right. Yep.
You can opt out.
Right.
Exactly.
That's
and every
right.
team has to make it. So you're right. I wonder if it's up in the air right now. Any division can be it.
And then you have I think right now it's still if you've done it's in the last decade. If you've done Hard Knocks in the last decade, you don't have to do it again. So they're going to have to make some changes somehow. I'm curious to see how that all shakes out. Maybe they say anybody.
The main rule should be if you won the Super Bowl, your division doesn't have to be. I think that would be that's.
Or should that be the one you do?
I was gonna say the NFL doesn't want to make
They
that
might go
rule
the
though
opposite.
because they want to cover the good team.
I wonder.
But
I see what you're saying.
But it's also it's also so like distracting having all those cameras there that like if you won it, you should be able to opt out if you want to.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, then Broncos, if that's the rule, would not be in it this year. Would be nice, I guess. Although Sean last year earlier this offseason did say he wants to be on Hard Knocks. So, the only reason he wants to be on Hard Knocks is to show that he's a relatable, funny sort of guy. Which it would be great to have Sean Payton on Hard Knocks.
It would be a lot of fun.
It would literally be like Bill Belichick at Tom Brady's roast, where he says, "I'm a guy with a big heart," and everybody just starts cracking up.
I know. That's the thing, though, is like he actually is really fun and really like there would be a lot of like I think back to like the day that he just had like the Jordan shipment come in. I think it might have just been receivers and corners got like a pair of shoes. And I remember like when I was talking to Jerry Judy, like we have to start defining Jerry now that he's gone. When he found out that like his shoes were there and he's like took off and sprinted. Like I was Pat too, just like took off and ran. Like there's a lot of like that fun stuff that
players
people
love
don't know
playing
that
for
about Sean. Players love Sean, which outsiders do not.
I mean, there's a reason why so many former Saints are now Broncos. If they hated playing for Sean Payton, they would not follow him to Denver. They would not be willing to take a pay cut to be traded to go play for Sean like Adam Troutman did last year. So, players love playing for Sean. Henry, the other news of the day, we got 2 new Ring of Famers in Denver, and we're going way back to right some wrongs. The Broncos today officially elected safety cornerback Steve Foley, and tight end Riley Odoms, both who played in the 70s. They elected them to the Ring of Fame. These are 2 guys that are very deserving to be in. They should have been in a long time ago, and they finally righted the wrongs.
Yeah, definitely. I obviously didn't see either of them. I'm a little surprised to find out that they weren't in. I would have just assumed. I've only heard from like my parents and those sorts of things.
Steve Foley was kind of a big one that people have been banging the table on for.
Did you guys see T.J. Ward congratulate him because they were neighbors and they wore the same number?
Nice. Also, Courtland Sutton said, "Congrats to Riley Odom. Steve Foley has always been one of the goals outside of winning a Super Bowl in Denver."
Yep.
Which, again, like, this is going to come to a happy conclusion. I just don't see a world in which Courtland Sutton isn't back and everybody's just friends.
Well, it depends what happy is for you, right?
Yeah,
like, if you think Courtland being gone, like, that's not a happy conclusion.
No, that's not a happy conclusion. I think he's happy, the team's happy, Broncos fans are happy, everybody's just happy.
You know what's really interesting is Steve Foley kind of said the exact opposite of what Courtland Sutton tweeted. Steve Foley said his message, because Steve Foley actually came out to the Broncos facility. He woke up today from a phone call from Greg Penner saying, "You're being elected into the Ring Ring of Fame, which is really cool because Hall of Fame voting, you know exactly when it's going to happen. You know when you're going to get that call of if it's yes or if it's no. With this, you don't really know when it's going to happen. So he woke up to this phone call. He immediately grabbed his family, made his way down to the Broncos headquarters to watch practice, talk to Sean Payton, talk to Greg Penner, and then he talked to the team after. And he said, never in a million years did I play this game for awards and honors. What I did, I never thought about awards or honors. It's really cool to get it now, but when I was playing, I never thought about these. What I thought about was playing for the love of the game and playing for my teammates. So it's kind of interesting that Steve kind of said, like, I never thought about this, and this was never my motivation for playing. And obviously, athletes are different now. So Steve kind of presenting that to the Broncos is really interesting, and that kind of fits in. I thought it was great that Steve talked to the Broncos today, because one of the things that Sean said today was there's a youthful energy in here, and he pointed to it a couple of times. And it wasn't directly about moving on from Russ or moving on from Justin Simmons, but he pointed to this youthful energy that's here with the Broncos, and I think it can kind of be molded right now, this youthful energy, and that Sean talks about, and all this youth in the building. And so having Steve Foley in here, I thought was really interesting, especially for him to be able to talk and kind of put that message out there. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. The other thing Sean said about those guys getting in the Ring of Fame after they talked to the team was it's only special because they won. Which he said a whole bunch of really, really, really nice things about both those guys. But that was kind of the other takeaway, is that, like, yeah, you can be a really good player. It doesn't matter unless you win something.
Yeah,
also,
they didn't really. When I think of someone saying that, like, because we won, I think of Super Bowl. They didn't. But
I mean, that's a very high bar to clear.
Yeah.
Like, what percentage
That's
of Hall
true.
of Famers won a Super Bowl, you know?
probably a lot.
Brian
Probably
Dawkins
is.
never won one, and he's considered an all-time great.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
you have to win a Super Bowl, but the percentages of Hall of Famers that have won a Super Bowl is definitely over 50%.
I think it might be split down the middle.
No.
I would probably say less.
Oh no.
I would say
Someone do
less.
that. You hear that's your homework tonight.
Yeah. See if you can figure it out.
But like, for example, a guy that didn't win that should absolutely be in the Ring of Fame is Justin Simmons. And speaking of Justin, Steve Foley has the Broncos interception record for most interceptions in his career. And he was asked, like, do you think anyone's going to break your record? And he said, I don't know about that. I was hoping Justin Simmons was going to. And man, that was such a cool comment. And I think one that really hit Broncos country hard, because it's like, damn, yeah, we hoped so as well.
Yep. The other one is like Courtland Sutton, not on a Ring of Fame path right now. Like, I'd have to go through. I don't know all the receivers who were in.
He's not.
But it's just a different conversation if he'd been on a team that won a Super Bowl, or been to a Super Bowl even, you know? Like, it doesn't mean...
No, 1,000-yard receiver is not a...
Well, no, he wouldn't be in, but then all of a sudden you're kind of on the doorstep. Like, right now, he's not necessarily. You don't think so?
No, I don't.
Huh.
Maybe this is a conversation we have tomorrow, or, Holy Diver in the Toyota chat saying Sutton is not even close. I kind of agree with that, to see which wide receivers are there or not. We're talking about Riley Odoms, the tight end. He was the 5th overall pick in the draft. It was before Kyle Pitts was picked number 4 overall a couple of years ago. Riley Odoms was the highest drafted tight end ever. And he lived up to it. Like, that's what we're talking about to make the Ring of Fame. And he didn't make it for decades. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pro, I think a 4-time Pro Bowler. And so we're talking about, like, different categories. You got to be a multiple-time All-Pro. And even then, you still might not make it for 40 years.
Yeah. It's just different when you're on teams that win, though. Like, that just is worth so much.
But these guys were on teams that, according to you, won.
Yeah, exactly.
And it still took them 4
I know,
decades.
but they're in.
Steve Foley is the interception leader for the franchise history. The franchise has won 3 Super Bowls. I'm interested to see how many guys you think should be in then.
Well, I don't think Court should be in.
You said he should be close.
I mean, if they'd been to a Super Bowl, if he was the number one receiver on a Super Bowl team, then all of a sudden, like, there would be a conversation.
The goalpost is just
no. That's what I said. It's like
now.
when you're in that tier, when you're competing at that level, it's the same thing with Justin Simmons. Like when you talk about him, like it's going to be tougher for him to get in just because of that. It's going to be really tough.
100%.
Okay.
Obviously, he has to. You don't think Justin Simmons is a Ring of Famer?
No, I think he is. But it's a lot tougher now. If he'd been on, say he got into the league a year before and had a Super Bowl ring, then things would be different, you know? Like, I think for him getting to the Hall of Fame is going to be really tough because, again, it just hasn't been, so far at least, on a team that's done that. Like, I think Sean is very much right that winning is a big part of that. And it's a big part of the memories that people have of you. You know, I wonder what Brandon Marshall's stats look
Jose
like.
in the Toyota chat saying Eric Decker's, Courtland Sutton isn't even on Eric Decker's level yet.
No.
And that's 100% right. Did Eric Decker win a Super Bowl? No.
But he went to one, yeah.
Yep, but he didn't win one.
No,
and neither did these other guys. I think this is a good conversation that I think we need to table and bring up in a little bit. You did some research. Did you find anything?
I'm gonna have to do the math tonight. There's
fair, totally fair. Okay, before we get out of here, want to make sure we hit this super chat. And by the way, a lot of people in the chat have been asking about any Uwazurike. He is still on the suspended list for gambling. He can come off of that, I think, right before training camp.
July 24th, he can apply.
Yep, so right before training camp, that's when he can apply. I would imagine if he's followed the steps, which I would think so, that he would be able to come back. But we'll keep you updated on that. But he guaranteed will not be here the rest of the offseason program.
3 more things. 2 of them were super quick. Alex Singleton looked super fast again today.
He did.
People just, for some reason, people don't think of him as a fast linebacker.
What's that reason?
It's because he's white. I think that's actually a good part of it. I don't think there's any way around that one. I think if you were to line up all the linebackers in the NFL, have him race, Alex would do a better finish in a better spot than most people would expect.
He's and they're utilizing that speed is what I'll say.
Oh yeah, I mean that's like his really entire game is that sideline to sideline stuff. Today you saw it on third down, little check down, just blew it up, nothing there. Other one, Art Green. Art Green made another play. He blew up a screen. I can't remember if it was the one where Lil Jordan Humphrey missed a block. You don't like seeing that, but there were a few missed blocks on those screens. Art Green back-to-back weeks with a play. I think that's really notable. And then finally, Will Lutz had a horrible day. Like it was rough. We're not allowed to give percentages here, but it was not a percentage that you want. By the end of it, Sean Payton was kind of like in there, just kind of like real tight watching. It was the kind of day where I almost wonder if right now you've got the 2 punters on the roster, you got the 1 kicker on the roster. If they make a decision on those punters, which means you probably keep Riley Dixon, get rid of the second punter and bring in a second kicker just for some competition next week. It's probably a little extreme, but there's I would say there's a 15% chance that you make a move like that before practices.
Yeah, and remember the Broncos just gave Will Lutz a new contract with a lot of guaranteed money, multi-year deal. So not what you want to see from your kicker, who looks like Russell Wilson because he's wearing number 3 now. But yeah, Sean was very involved with that. Once kicks were going left and right, not the best sign.
Last one was a doink.
Yep.
Last one was a doink from 53.
Yep. Yeah, they weren't super long kicks either. Okay, our super chat coming in from Triple G says, it looks like Sean is actually having fun this offseason. I tweeted last week after watching the first OTA practice that I think we're going to see a different Sean Payton this year because it's fully his team. It's always been his team, but now it's his team with the quarterback room. And Henry, you and I were able to see that up close and personal last week with Sean, just very much feeling a lot more comfortable about this team. And I think we're just seeing that again this week. I do think we're going to see a more relaxed Sean Payton in a way that I think fans are going to embrace.
Yeah, it's just a more fun project. Like if you think imagine he was those obstacle courses for dogs. Yeah. Imagine if he was the guy who trains dogs and takes them through that whole thing.
Oh, like orphan dogs?
Like orphan dogs, yes. But last year
Sean's words on mine.
You had kind of this aging dog and old dogs don't learn well and all those sorts of things. And your job is to get this dog to go through the course and you just know it's not going to go well. And you really know that you're just kind of screwed. all of a sudden, once you have like a few puppies and you're just running the puppies around, you're like, oh, I can really make something happen. Like Sean is at the point where the Broncos' future success is on him, whereas last year the success was just riding on. They might have just been doomed. I'm not sure it was really riding on anything. I don't think that the ceiling was all that high, just given where things were. Like Russ, they found a way to turn Russ into a pretty average quarterback. Again, like an average quarterback doesn't get you very far. So yeah, this is kind of like the year one of you get to build your team and mold it to do whatever you want, and you got a quarterback to do the run the offense that you want to run. And there's like so many different players who could turn out to be impact players this year. Like there's 5 running backs, so I think at the end of the year you could be saying like this guy's awesome. The running receivers, there's like 7 tight ends, like only a few, but there's just so many more possibilities now than there were at this point last year.
And as the old saying goes, if Sean is happy, everyone is happy. And it appears Sean is happy, so everyone is happy in Broncos country. Henry, thank you for your insight today. Yahir, thank you for producing for us. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in the Toyota chat. Hit us with a thumbs up on your way out. We really appreciate it. It helps us a lot. And we're going to be back a Friday fun show tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stay tuned on the DNVR Broncos podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.